All right, this is lesson 910, COMP1004, Rapid Application Development, Part 3. So we just talked databasing. Now, how does this work with your assignment? Well, what does it say? It says, create a multiforme project that simulates a computer purchase. The program initially gives the user an option to start a new order or load a saved order. So this loading and saving stuff is going to be covered next week. Start a new order, this is going to come from your database, right? Now, if you notice up on Blackboard, I've already put up a database and image files for you that you can use. If you choose to make your own database and your own image files, good luck. It's going to take a while. It's not impossible to do, but there's a lot of planning involved. I'll give you bonus marks for it, but it's got to be robust. It's got to make sense, right? It's got to be on the same level, let's say, that I've given you, right? I created this database. It didn't come from some random source, from a book or something like that. It took me a while, right? Not because the information in it is awesome, right? But only because I wanted it to be somewhat relevant to what we were doing. Okay. So you need to put together this menu. Okay, here's the menu diagram for your file. As an example, you're going to have an open, save, and exit as in your product info form. Okay, open, save, and exit. Okay, in your order form, you can print. You can go back, as an example, and you can have a help about. So these are depending on where your menus are going to be used, your menus are going to differ. So you're going to have two different menus. One for your menu, your product info, and the other one for your order info on the order screen. Okay, which is key. And you haven't done more than one menu before in an assignment. And again, like I told you before, this is the most involved assignment, the one that has the most glitches and errors that I've always been given by different students, right? They can't get it to go properly. They can't make the thing select right. So that's why I'm talking about it in detail with you now and again next week, by the way, because we need to go over it a couple times. Okay, so your program says your program should contain 4 forms: your start form, your select form, your product info form, and your order form. Okay, your start form includes a splash screen. Even though it's actually, your splash screen is an actual form itself, I really don't count it as a quote-unquote form. It's just a screen that you're going to pull up. It's going to disappear in 3 seconds. I'm giving you half a mark for functionality in this time and half a mark for GUI for just this form itself. If you notice, the marks for functionality and GUI are shifting for this assignment, right? Before, you were getting like 1 mark for GUI and 1 mark for functionality, and pretty much it was like a 1-1, right? This time, there's more emphasis for marking on this assignment, which can screw some of you up, on functionality rather than just drag and dropping stuff on the screen, all right? So this is where you actually have to make, this is your kind of a culminating assignment that makes sense that you're going to get marked more on functionality than GUI. So for, what's that? Sum 4. And then it's the exam. Right. I know it sounds like we're coming up to the end of the course already. I'm just giving you this stuff early so you can get this, so you can do well on this thing, right? So again, you're going to have button controls to start a new order and so on. Let's take a look at what I'm not going to go through every single details here. One thing I've asked you for is a default icon for the project, right? And I said go to Project Properties Application tab. Well, if I go to my project properties, let's close this for a second. So here's project, here's my properties, the name of the project and the properties, right? Here's my application tab. And if you notice, my default icon down here is this, right? I've asked you for the first time to change your default icon to something else, right? I've given you a link too. And I really want to make sure that this converticon.com works. So let's try it.
That's what I used when I did.
Did you?
Mine was created a JPEG and PNG version of my icon, then I converted it. I don't remember which I passed.
So here's your converticon.com. You get started, right? And then from there, you select the icon. And if you notice, it'll give you instructions in the assignment. Right? It says, ensure the icon is no larger than 32 by 32, right? And the icon has to have an ICO extension, right? So this is where you would convert a JPEG file or a PNG file or whatever you're using into an ICO file. If you don't have an ICO file, it won't work. It won't give you a custom icon. Okay? So that's one of the kind of the quirky things you have to do. Let's take a look further down and give you some examples of forms I've created. So here's an example of a splash screen, which is really poor. I've just kind of put up this dollar computers, a dollar sign and a computer, right? Which, by the way, I borrowed from the internet. And then I cut, nah. And then there's a start form, and the start form is really just a control form. It says start a new order or open a saved order. So this is where you're actually going to have, your start form is almost like the start space where you can control what you want to do, right? Do I want to start a new order now? I want to see a new movie? Or do I want to open a saved order, and maybe, or sorry, movie. I want to open a saved order. I've already kind of, I've kind of put together a computer I want, and I want that computer that I've already kind of I've selected from a list. Select form actually, if you notice, this is a Datagrid view, right? And the Datagrid view allows you, by clicking anywhere, if you notice one of the requirements is you click anywhere on any column here, as I've clicked here, and even though I've clicked, I don't know, let's say CPU brand is Intel, right? It's going to bring up your selection, a little text box is going to say your brand, so it's Toshiba, the type, and the price. It's going to kind of put some details down here in this little text box, right? So you select your computer and then you click next, okay? Then it's going to take you to your product info form, and if you notice, the details from your selection from the database that you've already loaded in, right, is going to be distributed in these read-only boxes here on your form, right? If you click select another product, it's going to take you back, right, to select another product, right, and it'll allow you to wipe what you've selected here. You can also click on the menu and click Save, and this is where you'd save your selection, right? And it's going to save your product ID and everything else here. We're going to talk about saving and loading next week and how to do that. You can also click Cancel. If you click this Cancel button in assignment 4, right, what should it do? It should cancel your order, right? So we're going to see what it says to do if it closes your form or it goes back to your select screen. Let's see. And here's your next button. If you click your next button, once you've selected everything and you're okay with this, right, you're going to confirm your selection. So here's your selection. You're going to put there's going to be a little image of your selection up here, right, with more details about your selection. It's going to calculate the price, the sales tax, and the total, and it'll allow you to print it if you want, as an example, or go back. So now, on this assignment, you need to be able to transfer data from form to form, which we talked about, by the way, a couple of lessons ago. Remember, in detail, right? Remember we did that multi-form assignment and revisited. You need to know how to do this, right? Whether you use the pass the ball methodology, you create your own classes, and so on. However you do it, right? Which we haven't talked about, by the way. It's up to you. We're going to cover object-oriented programming not next week, but the week after, right? So you may want to make your own classes at that time as well. It's not mandatory. I'm not forcing you to use a particular structure or way of doing your code. I want, at this stage, this would be like, if we're going to rank this course again, it'd be like a first-level course in terms of, hey, here's your course about how to build Windows forms and Windows applications. And then if I was going to do like another course, then I would ask different things, right? We'd have different, maybe WPF forms as an example. But in this particular case, I'm not forcing you to use a particular structure or syntax. I want the form and the application to work at the end, right? But you will be ranked on if you've come up with a really brute force solution. Like if your solution is real brute force, you're going to lose marks on functionality a little bit. So let's go back. So it says here, you're going to have a picture box, and you're going to have two options, right? Those buttons. Remember on the select form? You can either go a button control that starts a new order, and the button will hide the start form and show the select form. Okay? This is critical, guys. We've never done this before, right? All we've done is gone from form A to form B to form C before. Okay? We've never gone from form A to form B before, or to form C, and then back to form A. We've never done that before, right? So from an instantiation perspective, there's some tricky stuff that's going on here. So be aware of it when you're plotting your assignment number 4, that it doesn't work linearly, all right? Because Here, I could also go, in the second, in item number C, it says, add a button that gives the user the option to load a saved order, and that's going to Form C, Form 3, not Form 2, right? And if that happens, right, how do you go back, right? You have to, in your mind, you have to kind of set this up and conceptualize. Do I erase what I had before and set up this new, a new series of forms? What do I do? How do I instantiate this stuff? There's many, many ways of doing it. Add a button control to exit the program as well. So basically, there's three options, right? Select, a new order, load a saved order, or exit the program, right? And a picture control that's basically going to say, hey, you're doing a dollar computers you're in dollar computer. And by the way, it says from the project's resource library. Please, not just for assignment number 4, but even though your assignment number 3 is due. And when is it due, guys? Tonight, right? So if your assignment number 3 is due tonight, right, please, when you're using images and stuff like that, I don't want them to be absolute pathing, all right? Please make it go from your resource library, because if I can't load your images, I'm going to make you lose marks, right? They have to work within your resource library, not absolute pathing. Okay, I'll say it again. Okay, so your select form is where you have your Datagrid view, right? And if you notice, it says, ensure the Datagrid view's read-only property is set to true, which means you shouldn't be able to add new records, right? That's important, right? And then I want to add a label in a text box to the bottom of the form to let the user know which hardware he has selected. Write an event procedure, in this particular case, an event handler, that highlights the entire row of the Datagrid view. How do we do that? So if I go back, let's go back to my example. So here's my example. Now we're doing a details form. Let's take a look at our books form as an example here. And if I look at events, right, there's different kinds of events that I can select, right? For example, cell content click. Is that the right one? Cell click. There's another one, right? You have to experiment, find out which cell, which is the right thing to do. Is it any cell, right? Is it a column? Is it a row, right? Look, column name changed, right? Column state changed, right? So you have to decide. Maybe you need to write more than one event handler, right? That only uses one function or method, right? So when you click either a row or column, any cell, it'll highlight that row. That's what you want to do. So you got to write your own custom event handler to do that in order for you to get marks for this one. Okay. The other thing is write a function or method that copies all the data from the highlighted row of the Datagrid control to an array. Now I've said it's an array, but what if you say, hey, Tom, I don't want to use an array. I want to use a structure. I want to write it I want to write it right there to a local file. I want to do different things. You know what? I'm going to give you the flexibility to say an array would be the minimum data construct that I'm asking you to put together. If you want to use struct, an array of structures, that's up to you, right? How you manage this thing yourself. To me, an array of structures makes sense because, or if you're going to make your own custom class, we haven't covered classes, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't start thinking about how to use your own custom class to set up your information, because really what we're doing is we're saying, what's my manufacturer's field, what's my model field, what's my cost field, how do I do that? And it says here, display it at the bottom of the form, right? But really what you want to think about doing is, on the next form, right, so let's go to the next form here, it says add a next button that takes the user to the product info form and hides the select form. This option will be grayed out, disabled, until the user has selected a row from the Datagrid view. So initially, your Datagrid view should be unselected, right? You got to figure that out too. Don't select anything on your Datagrid view. And then when you click on the Datagrid view, it highlights the entire line with a particular color, your choice, right? And then it's going to display some minimal information on the bottom in that text box that you've created. When you click next, it's going to take out that information and pass it along to the next form. So here's your product info form. You have a menu strip we talked about before. and a series of labels and buttons separated by group boxes as appropriate that display the computer component fields that the user chose from select form or a previously saved file. Here's the complexity. If I get it from select form, how did I get it? As an example, the select form. Did I get it through an array? I didn't say so. I didn't say store it in an array. I didn't say store it in a structure. I didn't say store it in a text field or another text file. I didn't say anything. I said, get the information that I selected from the other form and put it into my controls somehow, right? You don't have to make here data-bound controls. Some of you may try to do that. You might say, well, I have a data source, and I've selected a data source, and I want to create these data-bound controls. Sure. Go ahead, right? That's not an easy solution, though. It's warning you in advance, right? And it may screw you up a little bit. What you may want to do is pull in everything into an array or into a structure. That's my recommendation to you. That data that you can fool around with now that's outside of the database. You've just loaded it in, right? From the database itself. And now you've displayed it. Now you're going to give the user, in this particular option, to either open a file, right, through the open file dialog, which is we're going to talk about next week how to do that. And I've said with some filtering and stuff to search a text file, or save your selection to the product.txt file by default. And you can change that to whatever you want. Yes. Yes. Just one. But you can save different files. If you want, whatever you want to call the file, if you want to keep saving, like selecting something and going and saving stuff, you can. It's up to you. The program should allow you to do so, right? The product.txt is going to be your default your text file that's going to be called. So if you don't know, if the user doesn't select the name that he wants to save for his file, product.txt should be the one you pull up, right? I'm not asking you to make a custom extension for now, for different reasons, okay? Use a text file that you're going to save it to. It's the easiest thing. I would like to see something like this for you guys. That would be good for me as a demonstration that you know what you're doing, all right? Select another product, add a select another product button that hides the product info form and shows the select form. And when the user goes back to the select form, his new selection is reflected on the product info form when he returns. In other words, if I have my select form, this is a challenge here, guys. We talked about before. So here's my start form. I can go to my start order here, or open a saved order here, right? Here's the complexity. So I go here, I select Toshiba, this Toshiba laptop or whatever, right? Then I go here, it displays, right? But now I want to click select another product and then go back here. It should still have this highlighted when I come back, right? Then I've got to basically click on, if I click on something else, when I come back here, it's going to display the new information. Again, passing that information back and forth between the two forms. But what if, and this is where people get screwed up, I don't even start here. I don't start a select form. I can open a saved order, which is going to take me here, right? It's going to actually open a file dialog, right? And then when I've selected my file, product.txt, right? It's going to place the information here. How do I do that? Right? And can I use the same open file dialog information? So I'm going to write an open file dialog, which we're going to see next week, that I can handle both requests, right? Not just one different file dialogs for different things. You could do that, but why? Okay? And then now, after I've selected my form, what if I want to make another selection? What happens? I want this to be highlighted again. Whatever you've loaded from your hard drive here in a file, when you go back now, right? You're not going back. Product info form, if you've gone there first, doesn't know anything about select form. So how do you now re-highlight this field? That's the challenge, right? Because now you're not instantiating things, right? You're not instantiating things in order. They're out of order. And this is going to be your biggest challenge, I guarantee you, if you're going to have this problem, right? If you haven't figured out how to go back and forth. There's many different strategies here. You could instantiate a whole new form and forget the other order. You could, right? I'm just saying. Or you could also create a lot of these forms ahead of time, right, and hide them all. That's something else that you can do. So your main form here, there's another option. this start form is your control form, right? And in your start form, what you do is you instantiate from your start form all these other forms, and you pass that along, that data along to select form, right? Which might be a strategy, right? A reference to those forms to select form in product info form. So they're already instantiated. You're not really reinstantiating them. You're just passing the data along to them. Like, here's my form. And you've already hidden them without a selection. And then when you come back, all you're doing is you're writing an event handler to select the item that you've selected already, that you've loaded up. So there's a search required here for it to be done. The points aren't a lot, though, right? So someone might say, well, what if I can't do this, Tom? It seems like pretty complex stuff. Yeah, it can be, depending on how you do it. There's many strategies. I'm just giving you one possible strategy, right? But if you notice what it says here, if I go to my product info form, if I click this select back, it's only worth 1.5 marks functionality. So guys, if you can't do this, right, don't spin your wheels, right? Do whatever you can. Don't spend your time busting your head for 1.5 marks when you could add in some other kind of options to make this up, right? Because it's not easy stuff. You get 1.5 marks to do this, and it's not as easy as it looks. So you may want a different effect, is what I'm saying. You may go back and then nothing's selected, and the user has to select something again, right? You lose marks, but at least you don't lose your time. You don't lose your head and your mind, right? Okay. I know I'm going through things in detail, but I'm just mentioning it to you because, again, there's some issues. Okay, so you've gone through here. You've just selected one or the other forms. You've gone back and forth. You can do that now. And now you decide to go next here, right? When you go next, you go to your confirmation. But there's this back button that allows you to go back and forth. So again, your last form, your order form, should have somehow all the information being passed down to it. Different strategies again. Pass the ball methodology. You can use a structure. You can use a text file. Right now, you're going to learn how to use text files. You can store your information in a text file between forms. That's up to you as well, right? You can do many different things to handle the information. I'm not telling you exactly how to do it. Example, up until now, I said, hey, pass the variables, all the information of the variables down, like pass the ball method. But what if you don't want to do that? What if you say, as soon as the user makes a selection, that's where I automatically save a temporary file. A lot of applications do that. They kind of set together a temporary file, right, that you store the information, and as you move towards the next file, your temporary file holds all your information. And then when you load the next form, whoop, you grab stuff from your temporary file. So that's not wrong. It's overkill, but it's not wrong, right? The good thing about that is if you set up a temporary file and something happens to your application, right, you could give the user an option to say, if your application crashes or you've been interrupted, you've got this temporary data that you've already worked with, right? Almost like a backup. Okay? Which is actually how a lot of things go. They've got this temporary information. Any questions? It seems straightforward. I'll tell you right now. When you look at this, you're like, it's okay. It's just databasing and file handling. Yes, it does. It seems straightforward. But you'll see there's glitches and the devil's in the details on this one. Okay? So start looking at it now, fresh. Okay, that's it for me for today. And we'll see you next week.